All right, guys. Today I want to talk about a topic, and first off, let me just say this: I meant to make this video a long time ago, and the reason I didn't make the video is because I couldn't find the footage that I was looking for. And essentially, what this footage was the 2019 Big Ten championships, and I watched this event live, and obviously you could tell by the title, but the match that I'm referring to was the 133-pound final between Nick Suriano and Austin DeSanto. And, this match, which some of you have seen and you can still find it on YouTube, but this match was just, super intense. You have two high-level competitors who want to win so badly, and neither guy was willing to relinquish that title. I mean, it was just what you want to see as a wrestling fan, right? It was intense, it was competitive, it was physical. I mean, literally, these two guys were out there just fighting without throwing fists, but doing pretty much everything else. And as soon as I saw this match, like I said, I watched it live. I thought to myself, I got to make a video about this, because the thing that really struck me about the match was not only their competitiveness, but the intensity of the coaches. And, on both sides, really, not just Iowa, but also, when we're talking about Rutgers, Donnie Pritzloff and also Coach Goodell, but these guys are as competitive as it gets. And, the thing that stuck out to me about the match was near the end of the match, the match comes down to the wire. And, Suriano is going to emerge victorious. And, things get a little heated at the end. And, as you can see, it was a little bit of back and forth, a little extracurricular activity. And, Suriano kind of gives him, a little bit of a shove. I don't know if he crossed any lines, but, definitely was testing the boundaries. And, it kind of gives DeSanto a little bit of a shove. And the coaches start getting involved, and the corners start to come out and try to pull the wrestlers apart. And I just remember seeing Terry Brands, and his reaction was he put his hands behind his back. He was staring Suriano right square in the eye, and he puts his hand behind his back, and he says, I read his lips, right? He said, go ahead, daring Suriano to do something, take a shot, hit me. Something. You know what I'm saying? Brands was taunting Suriano to do something. And, I saw that, and I was like, holy crap, I'm watching it, I'm just like every other fan watching this and thinking, number one, I'm like, this is awesome. Just the level of intensity and competitiveness between the two sides and the two guys and the two wrestlers. That's what we want to see as fans. But also just the intensity of Brands. I'm like, damn, this guy, we're not talking about some dude who just finished his competitive career, last year. Terry Brands hasn't wrestled actively since 2000 Olympics, where he won a bronze medal. But, I think by now, most wrestling fans, even you younger guys out there, are familiar with who Terry Brands is, and not just Terry, but Tom also, the Brands brothers. And, people my age, a little bit older, we remember those guys when they were competing, and we remember how intense they were. And people that weren't even Iowa fans were, we loved the Brands brothers because of their intensity. And they just, who doesn't love a fight, I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I'm a Penn State guy, always have been. But Penn State wasn't at the top of the food chain back then. Iowa was. Gable and the Iowa Hawkeyes. And don't get me wrong, hey, Penn State was always my number one team, but Iowa was a close second back then. I went to wrestling camp out there, and because people admired that level of intensity that Iowa brought to the table. And thankfully, Penn State's gotten there and maybe surpassed them, but that's another video. But just the intensity of Brands. And like I said at the beginning of the video, the reason I didn't make this video earlier is because that footage has disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. Now, the footage that I'm showing you is Flow Wrestling. Flow Wrestling posted a video, and it's still active. It's still up, but it's a matte side camera, and the angle isn't quite as good. You can't see Brands, basically challenging Suriano in that video. You can kind of see it here from the side. You can see him. He puts his hands behind his back, but there's people in the way. But when I saw it live, the camera angle was like somebody that had a better view of what was going on. And like I said, you could see Terry's face, and you could see him saying, you could read his lips, and he's saying, "Go ahead," like snarling, "Go ahead," like a pit bull growling, at his opponent. And I just when I saw that, I was like, oh man, I gotta make a video about this, because Brands is trying to fight Suriano. This guy hasn't competed for 20 years, and he's challenging a guy who's an up-and-comer at the time. I mean, he's got a national title now, but this, Suriano's probably 20, 21 years old at the time, maybe, and he's at the top of his game. I mean, he's still climbing. He's a potential Olympic champion. We don't know. We'll see what happens with Suriano, but the future looks bright. But Brands is way past his competitive days, and he's wanting to fight Suriano as if he's still competing today. And when I saw that, I'm like, man, you got to admire that intensity. Even though, a lot of people are going to say, man, Brands, come on, get over it. That's poor sportsmanship. You're a grown man, and you're trying to fight a kid, basically. But I think at this point, we could say they're both grown men. It's just Terry Brands is a lot older. But, and I guess maybe the point of this whole video is who would win? Because I'll tell you this, guys, I can guarantee you the Brands are still training. And I'm not talking about jumping on the elliptical for 20 minutes 3 times a week. I'm talking those guys are still on the mat. I'd be willing to bet that they're still strapping on a headgear quite frequently, and they're still going live. I could be wrong, and if I am, let me know if anybody knows for sure. But these guys are over 50 years old, and I guarantee you they're still getting after it in the room, and they're probably still competitive. And it's interesting because I've heard Terry Brands tell a story about he was talking to John Smith, arguably the greatest wrestler in U.S. history, and Terry saw John Smith at a tournament or something, and these guys have been rivals for a long time, both as competitors and coaches. But Terry, candidly says to John, when does it end? When do you lose that fire? When does that fire start? When does that feeling start to go away? When can I relax? When can I start to calm down a little bit? And John Smith looked at him and he said, "It never goes away." And I was like, dang, it never goes away. People don't understand this level of competitiveness that these guys have. And the truth of the matter is, you physically get older and your body can't do what it used to do. You're not quite as quick. You're not quite as strong. You're not quite as explosive. The workouts take a little more out of you. It takes you a few more days to recover. But the fire inside never goes away. It's still burning. And it's burning hot. And when Terry Brands is coaching Austin DeSanto in the corner, it's like he's wrestling. I heard another good story about John Smith, and, it goes along the lines of something like this. I could be wrong, but it was something like Jamil Kelly had just qualified for the Olympic team, and I believe that was 2000, ironically, which was the same year Terry Brands wrestled at his final Olympics. But Jamil Kelly, former Oklahoma State Cowboy, coached by John Smith, just made the Olympic team, and something happened. Again, I don't know the full dynamics of the story, but it was something like Jamil's in the wrestling room and John Smith's in there, and John Smith sort of challenges Jamil Kelly. Now, John Smith's probably in his 30s, maybe even 40s at this point, probably 40s, I don't know. He's 55 now, I believe, but that's a while ago. But John Smith kind of challenges Jamil Kelly. Let's go live. You guys know, you've been there in the wrestling room, right? Let's go live a little bit. And they proceed to wrestle. And sure enough, John Smith kicks the snot out of him. And again, Jamil Kelly, now we're talking, this guy's made the Olympic team. He's the prime of his athletic career. And John Smith beats him. And John Smith hasn't probably wrestled competitively at that point for at least a decade or so. somewhere around there. But still, he knew, like, I still got it. And he had to test himself. And so, I mean, there's an interview out there recently of David Taylor, and, I think he was asked, you got all these bulls in the wrestling room. You, Kyle Snyder, Olympic gold medalist, Jake Varner, Olympic gold medalist in London, Cale Sanderson. No more needs to be said about him, right? We know who Cale is. And they said, who's the best in the room? And David Taylor didn't think about it for a second. He said, Cale. Cale, no doubt. Cale beats everybody. Now, Cale Sanderson's 40 years old. Hasn't wrestled competitively for a while. I have to think back, but Cale's still kicking everybody's butts. Cale's still training. This dude looks like he could still go. He's solid. And so I'll kind of end it on this. It kind of goes back to my original point, which was, of course, this match was between Nick Suriano and Austin DeSanto. But at the end of the day, it was Terry Brands who wanted to fight. And I guess my question is, who wins that fight? Because Suriano's, we know he's tough. I'm not taking anything away from him. That kid's a stud. But man, Terry Brands was so intense. And so I don't know. I guess that's the question I'm posing. Who wins that fight? On the mat. Within the rules. Who wins that fight? Is it Terry Brands today? Or Nick Suriano? Or maybe, hey, we could even go from a different angle. Is it Terry Brands in his competitive days versus, Nick Suriano? Who wins that one? Terry Brands was a 26-pounder in college. So, what was he? 2-time NCAA champion. One-time runner-up. So I don't know. Something to think about. Food for thought. Let me know what you think.